Why do some people with average IQ achieve extraordinary success in relationships and life, while brilliant minds struggle to connect? Welcome to Reframing the Image of Relationships, where we'll unveil a powerful truth. While IQ may open doors, it's your emotional and spiritual intelligences that determine whether you can walk through them and build a life of meaning, connection, and purpose. Both science and scripture agree. There's two intelligences that are the real keys to thriving in love, leadership, and life. So I invite you to grab a pen and paper as we begin to unpack some vital points that will aid you in your relationship journey. That said, I want to kind of start this conversation off, if you don't mind, by putting out some definitions because, we've been around for a minute, all of us, I think, that's listening. And you hear on social media, you hear on TV, everybody talking emotional intelligence, and you'll hear people talking about, well, let's back up, not emotional intelligence. You'll hear people talk about their education. I have a degree in this and I have a degree in that and I have a degree in this and I have a degree in that. And they think that's the epitome of a thing. And once you achieve that degree, you've arrived. But then after achieving that degree, you realize that you still got the same concerns you had prior to getting that degree. You just got a title to go along with it now. So you are a title with problems. And I think that becomes part of the dilemma. So that said, first and foremost, since we're talking about emotional intelligence, EI or EQ, the Q is quotient. So emotional intelligence or emotional quotient is the ability to recognize, understand, manage, and use your own emotions positively while also empathizing with others. Now, this is important because if you guys were present for our conversations last night, we talked about manipulation. And a lot of times in the past, we use emotions to manipulate. And then for those of us who started doing some studies in emotional intelligence and things of that nature, if you're not careful, you can use the fact that you are emotionally intelligent to manipulate people who are not emotionally intelligent. So again, emotional intelligence is key. Again, emotional intelligence is the definition I just read. Emotional quotient is the capacity to attain that. Now, next is my favorite, spiritual intelligence. Spiritual intelligence is the human capacity to access deeper meanings, values, and purpose in life, allowing individuals to align their actions with a higher sense of purpose or self or consciousness. So the more spiritually intelligent I become, the less self-centered I can be. I'll say it again. The more spiritually intelligent I become, the less self-centered I can be. In fact, if you guys recall last night, we was talking about love and manipulation. One of the questions kind of compared the two. And my response to that is that if love is genuine, authentic from the source, it is virtually impossible for you to manipulate somebody using love. Because at the end of the day, if you understand what love is, now for me to use that to my benefit, it's outside of the scope of what love really is. So I just kind of want to share that moving forward. Um, this sets the stage for the conversation. I'm sorry, you about to say something? Okay. This sets the stage for the conversation that we're getting ready to have because I promise you, if you pay close attention, last night's conversation is going to link into this conversation. And then tomorrow morning's TikTok Live is going to be the culmination of both of them together. So if you are not going to be on TikTok Live, I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to miss it. But anyway, the first section is EQ and SQ matter more than IQ for life success. We appreciate the fact you have a degree, but your degree ain't your life. Now, I will start off by saying it's something that we have to realize that, yeah, your intelligence, your education will get you noticed, but it's your emotional intelligence and spiritual intelligence that determine your destiny. I put it back up here so you can see it again. That determines your destiny in relationship, leadership, and fulfillment. Just because you got a doctorate degree does not mean you're going to be that you're great for relationships. You're great in relationships, that people should connect with you. So that's one of the things that I want people to digest. Stop trying to pick what you have learned, what school you've been to, and try to make it so important. It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but one most responsive to change. Change is inevitable. That's one of the things that you can count on. But at the end of the day, how do you respond to it? And that's important for you to understand. EQ accounts for 58% of performance in all types of jobs, while IQ contributes only 4 to 10% to career success. EQ and SQ together contribute more to personal quality than IQ alone. And scripture always has to come up because the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the holy is understanding. So, that said, Lisa, what would you change in relationships if we collectively spent as much time developing our emotional awareness as we do acquiring knowledge?
Ooh, um, this has, I think there's so many layers to this because it made me think about upbringing. It made me think about the foundational learning that we should get as children, because I've heard it said that children are emotionally illiterate. Some because we don't take the time to help them to, you know, we see the behaviors, but we're not taking the time to sit down and say why, help them to understand why they're having these behaviors. Um, and I think that we address the action more than we do the behavior. So that's what it made me think about. And so this particular question, it makes me think about how I respond in relationships, right? I own a real estate firm, right? But so what? I mean, that's important. That's what I do for my livelihood. But in that, I make sure that um, I incorporate God because He's the one who blessed me with it, right? So I don't tout it. My position in interactions with consumers is that I make sure that I am meeting their needs, why they came to me, right? Because you said something that that sticks with me still to today. I think it was a John Maxwell quote. Know how much people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? And I think that's important because when people know you care and you're not just looking out for yourself and they can see that in you, then they can connect with you. And that is an opportunity for a relationship. Right. And so I think those are some of the things that I thought about when you can change let me see the question again. It just went down. When you're developing being more emotionally connected, then you are talking about your accomplishments because they're yours. They don't give us an insight that, okay, you're talking about yourself, but you're not here to help me, serve me. And if you think, like for me, I think of myself as a servant, right? And so I want to come, I want to help, and not because if there's any good thing in me, but because I trust God and He has given me this mindset to come into the environment and to want to serve. And that's not just in a professional, that's personal, right? Do we always 100% get it right? Of course, we always talk about that. Never. We never 100% get anything right. But I think learning and growing, because I was at one time so emotional, right, in my responses. I responded to everything emotional about how I felt, and I didn't take the time to use the forethought or to use the information that was being addressed in the moment. I would go back to how I felt about it, and I'm learning that a sound mind helps you to think in clarity, and it helps you to come to a resolution that is beneficial for both parties in whatever environment that you're in. So,
Yeah, I like that. Um, I reflect back on my educational journey, right? And for those of you who've, attended school beyond high school years, it is legitimately a journey. It's not free unless you've been fortunate enough to be an academic scholar or a athletic scholar or whatever, and you got a full ride, right? Those to me are the people. Those people are the fortunate ones, right? But for those of us, we had to find other means to do so, and some of us may do so by student loans. Some of us may do so by Pell Grant student loan combination, whatever that looks like. I would tell you the first time I went to college, and I always tell people like I'm a second time go at college because the first time I quit, right? But during that first iteration, I was that Pell Grant student loan type person. But then my second iteration, I was fortunate because the Army paid for the things that I actually acquired in my educational journey. But it's not just acquiring the education, it's for what cause. And I think the cause becomes the key that becomes most important. Most of us go get a degree or whatever because we're looking to make a splash into the work industry and make more than, whatever the basic salary is, minimum wage, whatever that looks like. So we do it for the sake of being able to hit a certain level on the food chain so that we can provide for our families. So ultimately, that's it. If you do not have a family, it's all about me at that point in time, moving forward. Now, if we had take that type of energy, the acquisition of resources to pay for it, so forth and so on, and apply it to emotional awareness, right? Get into the space to where we surround ourselves with people who are giving this information, teaching us this information, putting us through different scenarios and see how we manage our emotions in those particular scenarios, so forth and so on. For what cause? The cause to be better in relationships and be better for relationship, to be able to deal with adversity in such a degree that adversity does not overtake me, but I am calm within the midst of the storm. I think that's important. And again, as a man, that's one of the things that I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to be able to call calm to the storm for the sake of my family so that they are not, distressed and things of that nature. So now when we look at it, if we had devote as much time in developing emotional awareness from that perspective, I think what we would have seen a lot of people that had a lot less psychological trauma, a lot less emotional trauma, a lot less adversity when it comes down to family and things of that nature, a lot less parents taking their frustrations out on their children, a lot less spouses taking their frustrations out on on their spouse. So that's just kind of like my thoughts as I'm looking at this. Anything else you want to add to this?
I wanted to add, because we are talking about developing emotional awareness. Um, I wanted to add this one particular note as I was preparing for this podcast. Right, so it says the brain prefrontal cortex governs emotional regulation, empathy, social decisions, making research. So the research by neuroscience Anthony Damaso confirms that individuals with damaged or emotional processing centers make catastrophic poor relationship decisions despite having IQ. So you literally cannot love without a developed emotional brain. So that's what I was talking about as we're younger, and we are trying to figure it out. And this is where our teaching, bring up the child in the way that they should go, that they will not depart from. This is where the teaching is helping us foundationally, so we can take that with us as we continue to develop it and to grow and have these experiences in environments. And that's why being home and being a parent is one of the most important. I'm talking about from a mother aspect, right? I was blessed to be able to be at home with my children, right? And I think it was a beautiful opportunity for me when they were younger, because these are some of the things I could do, not having all the foresight and being equipped. I think sometimes I feel like I wasn't equipped enough to be a parent, but I was just making it through. But when I go back, as we have these discussions and we talk about the development that I was not aware of at that time, it helps me to understand and see where I could have done it better. Right. And so that's just us growing and striving and learning and continuing to learn and to continue to have these conversations and identify some of these things, because I have grandchildren now. So, and it's some things, information that I can share with my daughter, and then she in turn can teach her children. So when you understand that it starts from your upbringing, that is so important, because we have a great percentage of individuals who have parental issues. Just I'm just trying to say it kindly, right? That they deal with on a day-to-day basis, and I think these things can help in that aspect as well. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you're saying, and I don't think that's just like mothers. I think that's fathers as well. Like most, again, talking to me, most fathers don't know what they're doing when they're first having children, right? Even and I had my first, I think I was 20 years old, right? In fact, I know I was 20 years old. At the age of 20, I'm not going to tell you that I was skilled at being a father. Absolutely not. I was trying to figure life out, let alone now I got this little person I got to take care of. And oh yeah, he was born a preemie, so that adds an extra layer of care that has to go on top of that as well. And so ideally, it would have been a perfect scenario if I got to watch my dad do it, but I didn't.
Mhm.
So it was like the absence of that presence. Now I got to figure it out on my own. And then in the midst of it, now I got to listen to what you're saying about what I'm doing and how I'm doing it and whatever the case may be. Where was your daddy at again? Okay. You know what I'm saying? So it's all of these are, but again, this is the struggle that we deal with.
It-
These
it-
are the issues that we have. And then,
mhm.
oh yeah, by the way, you got an opinion on how I'm supposed to do it. I got an opinion on how you're supposed to do it. And both of us are just like, it's like we're building this airplane in flight and
Mhm.
losing altitude at the same time. So I think everybody can relate to that, especially if you're a parent. And now you get to the point of grandparenthood. It's like, oh well, son, I got some advice for you. I'm like, I don't want your advice. All right, then.
Yeah.
They don't say that. Mine don't say that, but it's like,
But
I
you can tell though, they be like, yeah, okay, whatever, I got this now. And I'd be like, okay, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pray because now you're under God's authority.
Mhm.
And the biggest thing that I can do for you is pray and love you. And then be a listening ear when you want to come and have a conversation.
Yeah. And like I said, they don't say that, right?
They don't, but they do it though. My daughter, she may be listening right now, but she know, but I'm telling her the truth. And she may be sitting there laughing.
Yeah, y'all are a mess. Again, keep bringing your comments, keep putting your comments in the comment section. We're seeing them. We greatly appreciate you guys. Good to see you, Shanithia Burns, Queen V. I cannot pronounce that. Oeo, that's what I'm gonna go with. I'm thinking about Mars Day and the Time, stuff like that. So, welcome. Continue to give your comments in this conversation because you guys are on it. Question: how might our life trajectory shift if we prioritize spiritual discernment over intellectual achievement in our major decisions?
Whew, how might that see this question right here has so much, right? This makes me think about sound mind again. Takes me back there, right? And the trajectory. I always have problems saying that word. um, I think it would catapult us. I believe that what I know now, if I had known 15 years ago, honestly, I believe my life would be completely different. Yet different. Yet I'm thankful for everything that I've experienced because if I had not gone through the process to get to here, then I wouldn't be who I am today. I would have missed some important information. So I think that this is an opportunity for those who are a little bit younger or who are seeking guidance and seeking understanding to get the information that they need that wasn't available to us at one time. And I think it would change our life, the way we interact with each other in such a huge way that it would be something that's unrecognizable. I believe that is if people would just come together and listen and be there for each other and not make it all about yourselves and serve each other in love, and that's another aspect of it, I believe, then I think that we would be in such a beautiful place that it would be unrecognizable. I just
Yeah,
believe
yeah, I agree. I think when we look at this question, for me, right, um, prioritizing spiritual discernment over intellectual achievement. Intellectual achievement is self-centered. It's all about me. It's what I want to do. I don't care how I color it. Right. The root, the foundation of it all is all about me, my achievement, what I'm focused on, my time, my and all of that. Me, and me. Now, sure, I do believe that there are some sacrifices that must be made in order to see the fruits of a labor. But then when I compare my intellectual achievement to the ability to spiritually discern, we have to also recognize that when the spirit shows up, he brings the fruit of the spirit. So I like the fact that you say the things that we do in love, because spiritual discernment requires me to do it in love, which means now to spiritually discern a thing, it can't be focused on me. I think one of the most misleading phrases that we will hear is when people talk about spiritual discernment and talking about a decision that they're making about their life. Mm, if it's not for this cause, right, then I don't think it's spiritual discernment. I always talk about two different types of discernment. You have discernment in the natural, and you have discernment in the supernatural, right? Discernment in the natural, we use a particular acronym that allows us to be able to dissect information in real time, point it back to him, right? OODA loop. Moving from there, now when I look at spiritual discernment, well, spiritual discernment shows up when I am practicing according to his will. So now I have shown the certain level of discipline that is needed in time and space, and that discipline is reflective of his word. Therefore, now I receive a download from him that allows me to make the necessary decision, leapfrogging what I understand in the natural for the sake of what is being shown to me in the supernatural. That takes your life and catapults it just like that. So it's like it's almost like, and I don't want to talk quantum theory and anything of that nature, but it's almost like time warping. You're folding time. So the time that it would take you to continue to do this in the natural, when you get a download, it's like he bends time for you so you can go from here to here, and you don't even recognize that that's what's actually happening. It's a beautiful thing if we actually put it into practice. I have to do my part of this relationship with him first. That's the discipline piece, in order to be receptive to what he is downloading in me for the sake of, wait, isn't there a scripture that where he says that he'll give you back the time?
Yeah.
Okay, I just
Redeeming the time, I think
right,
that's what
redeeming the time for the days of evil, right? That's kind of like what that looks like. If you do that, I can't stress it. Stop being so self-centered. Stop being so self-focused. Again, we're talking about relationships right now. Okay, we can talk business later. We can talk finances. We can talk all that stuff at a later point in time. But right now, we're talking strictly relationship. If we do that, show that we have the discipline needed to be in this space, then he'll give us the download that actually leapfrogs us from one, like again, I keep talking about a frog in a lily pad. It leapfrogs us from one moment in time in another moment in time. So that's just kind of like my thoughts. And again, I think it's a beautiful thing if we can get to the point of practicing it.
it made me think about what you just said, right? Because I think sometimes we think that that's replacing our intellect, right? Because sometimes we think that we know more than we do. But spiritual discernment is meant to govern intellect, not replace it, right? And our mind and our focus should be stayed on him, because we can't lean to our own understanding. So leaning to our own understanding is going to lead us to a place that is not going to be something that it's going to take time for us to come back from. Rather than staying in a place where God is trying to teach us and wants us to hear from him, because it's for our benefit, it's to help us. Because that's the whole purpose of the relationship. He's already finished and completed everything that he's going to finish and complete. Now, how do we have relationship or be in relationship with God as he's teaching us?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, thank you guys. Greatly appreciate it. I want to kind of bring up a couple of comments, and then we got to keep moving forward because Lisa seemed to believe that we're going to get through all the questions. I don't see it, but we're going to try. All right. Nick D said work mindset did not require a great deal of emotional awareness. I agree 100%. We just had to learn how to play the game. His divine appointments, I believe we figured out too much on our own. That empowerment perspective has said before, the Bible is a perfect example of relationship, and it's available. Absolutely. Nick D said that my trajectory has already shifted based upon this change. I am on a completely different path than my intellectual achievements would have taken me. This path has provided mental clarity I've never seen. Amen. Thank you for sharing that. I think shifting the priority from intellectual achievement to spiritual discernment is essentially moving from sight to faith. The evidence of not seeing it, but believing it to be so. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And they're spot on. So I want to kind of continue to press forward and listen. You guys keep putting your comments in the comment section. Again, make your comments, ask questions, whatever. It doesn't really matter. You guys are a functional part of the show, and we greatly appreciate you. Okay. Part two is emotional intelligence is the currency of relationship. I say it again. It is the currency of relationship. Okay. EQ is the universal currency that determines your ability to connect, communicate, and collaborate in every relationship, from marriage to leadership to parenting. Okay. The greatest ability in business is to get along with others and to influence their actions, said by John Hancock. And EQ accounts for about 41% of marital satisfaction, and 90% of top workplace performers possess high emotional intelligence. Going back to the book of intellect, Proverbs, he that is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he that ruleth his spirit that than he, I'm sorry, and he that ruleth his spirit, really? I'm sorry. Ah, man, what is going on? I got two of them. He that is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he that ruleth his spirit than he that taketh a city. Okay. Rejoice with them that do rejoice, and weep with them that weep. Romans 12 and 15. Okay, now we're to the question. So, in what specific ways do you see our current level of emotional intelligence either building or blocking the desired intimacy in our most important relationships?
Okay, so this. I think this is one of the questions that I was just digging into, and as I began to answer it, there were so many things that came up. I think this is the one that I called you about. I think it is, but so um, I think I want to focus on the call. God is calling us to speak truth in love, right? So truth in love means that I'm going to tell you the truth, and it doesn't matter what you think about it or how you feel about it. But truth doesn't care about that. Our emotions, our feelings. It just is the truth, right? So, but truth and love. So there's two simultaneous emotions, the skills that are going on at the same time: honesty and compassion, right? Which are both hallmarks of high EQ, right? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So without emotional intelligence, truth becomes a weapon and love becomes avoidance. Okay. So when I begin to think about this, right? When I think about how the high EQ, right, without this emotional intelligence, that truth is a weapon to some, and then others are going to avoid love because they think love from one aspect just means a certain thing or how they view it. Well, God is love, and He is teaching us, and sometimes it doesn't feel good because we have this core belief system of what we learned, what was taught to us, and we adopt it, and now we believe it. And if anything challenges it, it's a weapon.
Mm, mm, mm.
Okay, I'm gonna stop right there.
You were doing great. I mean, you were on a roll. Like I think you covered a lot of it. Really, I think so. Number one, whenever we see the word intelligence, we automatically think this thing right here. We automatically do. And so I think part of the issue is that for people who have been marginalized, I'll start there. We're always looking for a way out. We're always looking for a way ahead. We're always looking to get to a certain point. The dangers there, in my opinion, is that the oppressed then become the oppressor. So now, once I've gained a certain level of intellect, whether it's quote unquote emotional intellect, I tend to use that to my advantage against those people who are deemed not to be emotionally intelligent. Wait a minute. This sounds very familiar. We talked about this last night. We talked about this last night. You were given permission to express yourself, regardless of anything. I was suppressed when I was younger. Stop crying. Get up. Wipe that dirt off. Be quiet. Boys don't cry. We suck it up and deal with it. Okay.
Mhm.
So now when we get older, you're expressing yourself. I'm suppressing myself. And therefore, I am then at a later point in time made to feel a particular way simply because I'm not as expressive as you. Or you get to the point to where you feel like I need to express myself just like you. And that's not, neither one of them is true. So when we look at our current level of emotional intelligence, it's more of a competitive thing. Mine's versus yours. Mine's doesn't look like yours. So now I am what they'll call, what's the word? What's the word I used to hear? You are emotionally absent, emotionally dormant, whatever the case may be. No, that's not true. It just doesn't look like yours. Maybe you need to learn to speak the language that I'm speaking. Then you can have a better level of understanding. So the thing that emotional intelligence really teach us when we get to the mature side of it, because I like the fact you talked about the different levels, right? When we get to the mature side of it, I can have compassion for those who, when they were younger, were emotionally suppressed, and now they may be trying to find their emotional voice at a certain point in time. Now, again, this does not say feelings, this is emotions, because emotions are more important for the standpoint of connecting, right? I feel like stop because my emotions are different than when I'm trying to tell you what I feel like. Maybe part of me looking at it now is like emotionally unavailable. Thank you. Um, Maybe what it is that I'm using this thing to manipulate you to do what I want you to do. So it should never be a competition thing. It should always be a collaboration thing. And so we use emotions a lot of time to block intimacy, thinking that we're doing just the opposite. Well, I don't want to necessarily open up to you if you have the capacity to take something I share with you and go share it with somebody else. So now when you get to the point of like, oh, well, you're quiet. Yep, sure is. Because you almost adversarial right now. I'm just being honest. So when we look at our current level of emotional intelligence, it's not. It is emotionally combative. We combat each other with our emotions, thinking yours is better than mine, or mine is more superior than yours, when neither is true. It is all like we live in a okay. Everybody think the movie The Matrix is just an entertainment, but more so, it is really more so of an educational film if we pay attention to it. All of this is a pool of energy. We live in a pool of energy, whether we believe it or not. Everything is energy. So now when I look at my emotions are the expression of the energy that is within me. So now that being said, when we look at these, going back to what you said, these high level emotional expressions, compassion, love, empathy, right? All those things, those are high level emotional expressions. Low level emotional expression, anger, frustration, bitter, all that stuff. This one down here attracts dis-ease. This one up here attracts the things that you want in life. So that's kind of like what we have to consider. If we're looking at having authentic relationships, we got to get to the point to where we harness these high level emotions, emotional expressions, recognizing that it's coming from within. So everything that I am feeling, it requires me to go back and assess why, not for me to project it and make you adjust to it.
Now, I have some more I want to add to this.
I know.
because as it's just so much, and I'm going to just this is an insert from Dr. John Ottoman, one of the people the books that you told me about, right? and he talks about so I didn't even realize this pattern, because I know we're going to get to patterns a little bit later, right? And behavior, right? So I didn't realize this pattern until I was reading this, right? And I was like, wow. So when emotional intelligence is low, the amygdala, the brain's threat detector, remains active in relationships, right? So Dr. John Ottoman's research confirms that emotional contempt, criticism, defensiveness, and stonewalling, I think all these things I did when I was married, right? All low EQ behaviors, right? And all four leading to predictors in relationship breakdown. So when you think about the science behind this, the spirit and the science, because that's what I tried to merge those two, because I think that's what science does as well, as I began to learn from Dr. Dwyer, right? But I think, and then, I started like maybe 5-6 years ago when I was reading Dr. Caroline Leaf's book, and she's a neuroscientist as well. And these understandings begin to make so much sense to me spiritually, because you can see the connection. Right. So when you see these emotions playing out in relationship, the emotional contempt, the criticism, the defensiveness, and the stonewalling, which I didn't realize what I was doing. I didn't realize that me being silent was stonewalling, because it didn't leave room for us to have communication, because I thought I was being quiet and that was helping the situation, where it was diminishing it. And so all these indicators that I was not aware of, and had I been equipped with them before, then I could, I would be able to have, I think, a different outcome, right? And so there's so much more that we can learn in this as we connect the science and the spiritual with in these conversations, and it helps you to understand how awesome God is, right? And it gives you a glimpse into him and his creation and how he created us. And you can see it because it's been studied and these behaviors have a pattern and there's an outcome, an expected end outcome, right? So it's just, to me, I'll stop there. I'll stop because I keep talking.
No, you're good. You're good. I'm glad you said that. So those four things you named, what is it? Contempt, stonewalling, criticism, and what's the fourth one?
Defensiveness.
Defensiveness. Yes, those are considered the four apocalypse, the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Those are the major predictors of divorce. All you have to do is pay close attention. If people are using those things, any one of those things in their relationship, they're creating space. And when they tend to create space, well, more space is given. And so it's not like the adversary is on the attack. The adversary is already working, right? And so the more you criticize, the more you be in contempt, the more you stonewall, and the more defensiveness become. And defensiveness is a huge one
Yes.
because you are being taught. You are being taught, like on a subconscious level, by the information that is given you in the world to defend, right? Again, we are only supposed to defend one thing and one thing only. Like I'm an advocate of just like in my mind right now, like there's nothing about me I need to defend. Whatever your opinion is, thank you. I appreciate it. Good, bad, or indifferent. I don't have to defend anything about what it is that I'm doing, what it is that I'm thinking compared to your thoughts. Because ideally I don't have a relationship with your thoughts. So I appreciate that. But yeah, stop trying to defend yourself. Do more listening, as it pertains to what another person's observation is. You might learn something about yourself, right? Those things, especially in the world that is telling you, don't ever let nobody silence you, let your voice be heard, blah, 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 blah. Well, they're teaching you to be defensive. Well, they're teaching you to be single. I hate to say it that way. That's really what the truth is. When you go and look at the numbers from a large scale, like we're struggling. And I said this last night, and I got a little, passionate about it. Like we are struggling when it comes down to this thing called connection, right? Collaboration. We're struggling with collaboration because we have a tendency to look at collaboration from the standpoint of how it benefits me. That's not a relationship. That is manipulation. I'll say it again. That's not a relationship. That is manipulation. I am deceptively engaging myself in what appears to be collaboration, but I'm collaborating at the level to where it only benefits me, or it benefits me more than it benefits you. Careful, especially when you become discovered. That's all I can. That's all I want to add to that. When I'm telling you, this alone is so loaded. So thank you. So thank you for that. And I think I'm gonna skip the next question and dive into this one because just continue to peel it back, right? Spiritual intelligence aligns you with divine purpose. I'll say it again. Spiritual intelligence aligns you with divine purpose. EQ helps you navigate human emotions. SQ, spiritual intelligence, connects you to divine wisdom, purpose, and discernment that transcends human understanding, essential for relationships that honor God. Interesting. Transcends human understanding. Transcends human understanding. Isn't there a Bible that says, trust in the Lord and seek not your own? I'm just saying. Okay.
Okay,
I just want to make sure. The spiritual journey is the unlearning of fear and the acceptance of love. Marianne Williamson, and I agree wholeheartedly. Spiritual intelligence predicts leadership effectiveness beyond both IQ and EQ. Spiritual intelligence is positively correlated with ethical leadership, resilience, well-being, and interpersonal trust. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. So, that said, when facing relationship conflicts or major decisions, how often, and you can say it can be you, or you can just speak in general, it doesn't really matter. How often do you seek divine wisdom versus relying solely on your emotions or logic?
Let me tell you something. That was not often. I'm telling you. I think I want to say this to all, because this show is called Reframing the Images of Relationship, right? And I think it is so important that we really do understand some of the things that we may do that could affect or hurt a healthy relationship, right? And so when we are facing relationship conflicts or major decisions, how often do we seek divine wisdom versus relying solely on our emotionals or logic? So let me tell you what I used to do. When I would get upset, I would get on the phone and I would call my cousin, right? Now we right in the house together, and that's how I would approach it. That was years ago. So thankful for understanding, right? Not understanding that in this divine covenant relationship that's supposed to be protected and nurtured, and when these moments come up, how am I supposed to respond? My response is, okay, let's sit down and talk about this, and let's come and reason together. What does the word of God say to us as covenant believers, right? What is instructions? Because he's giving us the instructions, because he is the architect of relationship, of marriage, the architect of it. And it's better to live in the desert than yeah, he's the architect of this covenant relationship that we're a part of, right? And so he's giving us these instructions to help us. Now, they may not be what we want, because we were taught and we have adopted the wrong information, right? Or we saw exampled the wrong behaviors and we adopted them because my mama said, my daddy said, do it like this. Well, they're just trying to figure it out. We didn't know it, but they were our examples. They were still trying to figure out. So I say this, that when conflict arises, it's important that, and I think I've said this before on the show, but I think it's worth mentioning again, right? The order is already set in place. 1 Corinthians 11:3. I always love that chapter, because it's right there. The order's already been set. And so because God put that order in place for a reason, right? What I begin to study and learn is that the husband is the head, and he is responsible to Christ. Christ is responsible to God. The wife is responsible to the husband, right? And so if something is out of order, it trickles down. So if it affects the head of the household, everybody in that household is going to be affected. So my place as the helper is to make sure that I help or I advise. If you listen to me, and we're in relationship, and you know that I want what's best for this relationship, but if you don't listen to me, you are still responsible to God. That's going to be you, because I'm going to pray that, I'm going to pray for us, right? But I'm also pray that you hear his voice. But that's the advice as an advisor, as a helpmate. That is part of my responsibility in the relationship, in the framework. And so a lot of times I didn't know that. I didn't know that in great part until after I was divorced. And I began to study because I wanted to understand, what this was all about. What was my part in it? What could I have done differently? Because now we're walking two different paths. So it wouldn't serve me well to be focusing on, well, he did this and he did that and he did. Why? For what? Now I have to figure out what's my part and work on that and fix it and align it with what God has taught us and teaching us, because it's all there. All of it is there. All is there to how to be a parent. Everything is there about how to be a wife. Everything is there about how to be a husband. Everything is right there, and it's been there our whole entire life. I'll land right there.
Mm. I want to show you guys something real quick. Where's it at? The last of his kind. Good to see you, brother, and welcome. I don't want people to think that it's just one group of people. Because I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't know the last of his kind. I might know him, I don't know, but I want you to see that it's a common thing, right? I recommend don't let no one emasculate you. Took me years to learn that. It is a taught thing. And I'm going back to what you said just now. If the husband is the head, going back to what, and I thank him for being that transparent. If the husband as the head is emasculated, now he has no perception of his identity, not just his own personal identity, but his identity as in the marriage. So now he is just a person that exists. I told you about my grandfather-in-law. Like we would go see them and he would just sit in the corner. Like everybody else just having a good old time. He's just sitting there. And I often wonder, why is this man just sitting there like a bump on a log, not saying nothing, sitting close to the heater so he can stay warm, right? Because he was elderly, but didn't really have a voice, didn't really care about anything that's going on. And I learned some things later that I will not share here because it really made a lot of sense. But I think we have to recognize the damage that we have done to one another, both men and women.
Mm.
Until we recognize and own that and stop walking around like we are completely innocent. And I'm not saying that it's my responsibility to show all the wrong that men have done in history. No, I'm saying it's a single woman's responsibility to show all the wrong that women have done throughout history. But what I am saying is that we cannot walk around as though our species are totally void of any of the thing that was done, because what was done back there was taught, and then it was taught, and it was taught until somebody makes a decision and said it stops with me. I am no longer teaching this bad information. I am only teaching what the Bible teaches, and the Bible teaches me as a husband what to do. The Bible teaches you as a wife what to do. And as long as you're doing that thing, and I love the fact you made mention of your posture after learning your posture, what your posture would be. I thank you for saying that. When you now have that posture, I don't even have to tell you that you're supposed to be my helpmeet. You just show up as my helpmeet. That's
Mhm.
different. That's different. Maybe there's some accountability conversations that we, both of us, may need to have with each other down the road. But at the end of the day, we just show up fulfilling our roles because we are now being obedient to the instructions that are given to us. And like I said, there's only ever two issues when it comes down to relationship. And it will always be those two issues. Either you have an issue with authority or you have an issue with roles, or the roles that the authority actually have mandated. That's it. Everything else is just a subset of that. So when I go back and listen to look at this particular question, when facing relationship conflicts or major decisions, how often do you seek divine wisdom? Well, newsflash. If we are existing in relationship the way we're supposed to be existing in relationship, we don't have conflict. Either I have conflict or you have conflict.
Mm.
And what we do is go back to what the word says and allow the word to work out the conflict that exists within you or exists within me. If we can do that and stop projecting our conflicted rationale onto our partner, then we will have less issues. Just because you are conflicted with what the word says, that doesn't create a conflict between you and I.
Work
Go
it
sit
out.
down. Go sit. Go meditate. Go
Figure
think of what the word says. Find out the difference between what the word says and what you're feeling, and ask yourself why you feel that. Because one thing I'm not going to do, I'm not going to make amends for you for the word. It's not going to happen. I'm not going to give you no alibis. Oh no, don't worry about that. You're good. Yeah, we ain't going to keep that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm just gonna say I'm so thankful that God made me the woman. I'm thankful for that because men have a great responsibility and accountability. And um and I think when you think about the order, you know, when you think about how God set this up for us to be in relationship, right? Man answering to God, and woman is subject to submitted to her husband, right? When you think about the great responsibility, there's just help that's going to be required for him to accomplish the things that are needed to be accomplished, right? And this man, the one that God has called to be in leadership in a covenant relationship, a covenant marriage, has a great responsibility. But I think sometimes that, if I could, be so liberal to say this, sometimes a lot of people don't understand that. And so I think it's so important as we look at the framework of how God designed it, if we really truly go look at the blueprint, it's such a beautiful existence. And I hear a lot of times, I hear people say, well, I've never seen an example of it. Well, there are examples of it. If you just go to the word of God, it is right there. Now, whether we manifest them in real time, we always tend to focus on, the other than the image that is available for us to see and emulate, and then and continue to do as an example, right, in our relationships. Not that we're going to do it exactly like these other people are doing it, but they are available. These examples are available. So I think about that as well. So I'll be quiet because I can, talk about this. I'll be quiet now.
I'll be quiet. So speaking of examples in the Bible, there are biblical giants that demonstrate a high EQ and SQ in action. Okay. Jesus, Solomon, and Daniel provided perfect models of how high IQ and SQ create extraordinary relational success, wise leadership, and unshakable faith, even in challenging circumstances. Again, the book of wisdom: the tongue of the wise useth knowledge aright, but the mouth of fools poureth out foolishness. Emotionally and spiritually intelligent leaders retain talent at a rate of 27% higher than their low EQ peers and create teams that are 31% less likely to spiral during crisis. I think when we look at the scripture overall, you'll see some things. Jesus wept with those Jesus wept with those who mourn and showed righteous anger without sin, and always responded with wisdom and compassion. Solomon asked God for a discerning heart. 1 Kings 3 and 9. Daniel's faithfulness and wisdom in crisis exemplified both intelligences. So I think when we really want an example of how to do a thing, we can go to the scripture and find that the scripture gives you an example, and we can stop making the excuse about nobody ever taught me how to do it. Because here's the truth of the matter: nobody in your family taught you how to use the internet, but you know how to use it. So that said, consider Jesus's interaction with people. Consider his life, the things that he's done based upon what we understand in the Gospels. What specific emotional intelligence skill do we collectively most need to develop in our own relational approach?
I would say when I think about Jesus, his I'm trying to say this in a way that it doesn't minimize who our Savior is, right? Jesus always identified what people needed. He already knew, right? He knows our thoughts before we even have them, right? Even when we think about the woman at the well, and she asked for water. I think that's in John 4, right? And he addressed her relational brokenness, not the water. Okay. And so when I think about that, I think about also when we're talking about the EQ and the high EQ and the low EQ in this particular theory, neurologically, it's called the theory of mind. From my research, right? So that's the ability to model another person's inner world accurately. Most social media interactions can't do that, right? So they demonstrate the opposite. They project, they make assumptions, and they're very reactive, right? Which are low. And so when I think about the way Jesus responded, he responds to what we need, the instructions we need so that we can do better, that are contrary to what he has instructed us to do and be in relationship with him. So I'll stop right there.
No, you're doing good.
Okay, so let me add this then. Okay, so the compassion, right? Like you, the without enabling. So Jesus wept when Mary and Martha and John before raising Lazarus, right? That's in John 11:35, right? So he felt people felt like, that I'm trying to make sure that I say this correctly. Let me do the neurological sequences that it's talking about, right? So there's compassion, there's emotional, there's emotional that's being addressed in this moment, right? So the behavior tends to skip the feelings and then rush to advance giving judgment, right? So when he cried versus taking the time to understand what he was doing in the moment, right? Understanding what they were going through and being in relationship with them. So I think in these moments we can see the Son of Man, and then there's the Son of God. So I think in those moments I could see that when we're using these examples, because these are the scripture texts that I went to as I was studying, right? And that the boundaries that were set when Jesus turned, when he went in and turned over tables. It wasn't that he was trying to make sure that they understood what this house is for. You're not using it for that. And sometimes I think what you would say that rebuke is love, and sometimes you have to come in and respond in that way in order for you to get a person's attention, not to be abusive, but to say, look what you're doing, shock them. Sometimes I think that's a part of the requirement, right? For us to understand the behavior that we are currently exhibiting. So I'll end right there.
No, I love it. I like the fact that that you went down that. So what I'm hearing is that this conversation took you down a deep dive study, and it's good. I'm glad to hear that, because it should. I think everyone should go down that deep dive study to get a better understanding of the space in between where we're called to be and where we currently are, and understanding that there is a huge difference between the two. Um, and one of the things that, for this particular question that I thought about, as it pertains to, the emotional intelligence skill that we need in our own relational approach, it is 100% compassion. And I think we view compassion from the wrong lens, because we're looking at it through our own lens. Again, that's the thing that we do. We go to the Bible with our own perspective. Therefore, our reticular activating system shows us what the human wants to see. So you'll go to the Bible, you look at the thing, and then the Bible, you believe it's saying this particular thing, but it did not say that, right? I believe wholeheartedly that the level of compassion that Christ was displaying in the Bible, it differs from what we see as compassion in the Bible, because we view it as like, oh, he's feeling a great level of empathy for the things that they're going through at that particular point in time, because that's how we see life. I believe his level of compassion is the difference between what the Father is going to do for us in the future, right? Based upon the covenant, what the Father has promised us and what he is going to do in the future, and the way that we are unaware of what that really is in real time. And our behavior shows based upon what we really and truly do believe. So now when you look at that vast array, like literally the distance between the promise of the Father and the behavior of the human, it does not show that the human truly believes what the Father is actually saying. So that's why I believe, and again, this is my opinion, right? But I believe that that's the compassion that Christ had for the people. It wasn't so much about what they were going through, right? It was more so about they don't believe at the level of what the Father is saying. Because you don't believe at the level of what the Father is saying, your behavior now dictates your life. So you're living a life that's outside of his will, but yet you're claiming that you belong to him. And then unfortunately, there may come a time where he says, depart from me, for I never knew you. That is enough to have a serious degree of compassion for someone else who don't even know that that's what you're compassionate about. How can I say that? Because he was on the cross and he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they're doing.
That's what he said. That's what he said. Because he loved us so much. Freely, he gave. Freely.
I think this is the one you're waiting on right here.
Okay,
How can we cultivate the kind of spiritual discernment that Daniel demonstrated when facing pressure to compromise our values in relationship?
So, let me get the question again, because this one had me I'm gonna tell you, I felt a little ill-equipped coming into this conversation, because this is your profession, your study, right? So I wanted to take the time to make sure that, and I still want people to understand that we're talking about reframing the images of relationship. And the first relationship that we have to make sure that we are in line with is that relationship with the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. So I still want to make sure, because then that helps us to be better in relationship with each other. And so this took me down cultivating when Daniel really truly blessed me, right? Because when we think about Daniel, he was a young man, right? He was a boy, a young man, and there were so many things that he was learning to do, and his brain wasn't quite even developed yet, right? And so when I begin to study and look into this, the question that you're asking, right? Okay, you go ahead and start. You go ahead and start. Then I'll finish it. You go ahead.
You were doing good.
You go
I,
ahead.
I believe, and I think I'm gonna try to keep my response concise-ish, if you will. I believe for us to be able to cultivate that kind of spiritual discernment that Daniel demonstrated, remaining true to God while living in challenging, in a lot of times like a hostile environment. I think it requires a huge degree of intentionality. We kind of talked about intentionality last night, but that intentionality must accompany daily practices, and those daily practices over the course of time has the ability to strengthen our inner resolve and connection to God. It's like we will say we are committed to a thing, and then we can see this in relationship. We'll say that we're committed to a thing, but yet my daily behaviors are not in reference to that thing that I say I'm committed to. Well, we see it happen every year. January 1st, February 28th or 27th, whatever year we're in, right? And what ends up happening is that you start off good January 1st. Then by the time March 1st come around, like, yep, I'm good. I ain't gonna do it no more. I've achieved my goal. Well, you achieve your goal of going, but you didn't achieve the goal that you had set out beforehand when you decided you was going to start going. So the constant interaction with him in whatever degree that you do it, whether it's in prayer, whether it's in meditation, whether it's in study, single study, group study, praise and worship, all of those things, right? That kind of strengthens our resolve and moves us closer to him. And you go back and look at Daniel, like he and his compadres, that's what I'm gonna call them, they had the ability to stand firm in Babylon. And so that's it. So I think we get to the point to where we can build a foundation that has non-negotiable values. I'll say it again. We build a foundation that has non-negotiable values. Interaction, man, woman, non-negotiable values. If you decide to become a part of my life, like Kevin Hart say, my stuff is your stuff. Your stuff is my stuff. We both have joint non-negotiable values. It's not that your values are different than mine or mine's. No, that's not true. If we're in this thing together, we have non-negotiable values. We have a daily spiritual practice that reflects the level of discipline that we're trying to get closer to the Father. Because make no mistake about it, that's what a marriage is. A marriage is simply, and I think we kind of over embellish it because we like to hang out into the fairy tale land. A marriage is the reflection of what God put together. When you stand on the altar and the preacher says, what God put together, let no man set asunder, he ain't talking to Tamika and Tyrone. He ain't even talking about Tamika and Tyrone. He is talking about what the Father has orchestrated between Christ and the church. And the marriage is a replication, a representative of that.
Now,
No more, no less. No more,
That's-
no less. Get out of the fictitious mindset of this fairy tale and I just want to have a house. You made all that up. Walt Disney did a thing on us, and I'm just keeping it real, right? White picket fence, none of that matters. The marriage is a reflection between the marriage of Christ and the church. That is all. So now we have to now jointly, because we come together as one. So now we are jointly doing these things. Whatever I thought I was doing in my singleness, in my relationship with him, now we do it together. right? We have these non-negotiable values. We have these daily spiritual practices. We apply discernment in the relationships itself. So we are exercising OODA loop as well as waiting on the spiritual download for the Father. And we act with grace and respect and tact. So yes, like you said previously, it may be a time I may have to speak to you just a little bit directly. Are you going to exist in that low emotional intelligence where you view my direct conversation with you as a personal attack because you want everything I say to you to be sprinkled with sugar and flowers and candies? You know how it was when we grew up. You know, girls are sugar and spice and everything nice. But, you know, boys,
Boy.
frogs and tails and puppy dog tails. Come on, man. Frogs and snails and puppy dog tails. Come on, man. You already setting the condition for this. So, like I said, I was going to try to keep it short, but it was different. It was difficult.
I love that you went and gave the blueprint of the church, the bridegroom and the bride, because I think that's so important in the emulation that it is referring to what we're modeling it after. Because I think that's foundationally, that's important for us to understand what we're entering into. And when we don't have the information, then we have a sense of false identity. Is Walt Disney? Is what you said? Walt Disney identity?
Yep.
Walt Disney identity. So I wanted to answer the question because this one, it took me, I think it was more so it became more personal to me and God teaching me in this moment, right? And helped me understand foundationally that if this was something that I was taught to do again, the outcome would be different, right? So Daniel 1:8 says Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself. So he made a promise to himself, I will not defile myself. So the decision was made before the pressure arrived, before anything arrived, right? And this is a neurological principle. I'm going in coach's lane again, right? Where we are pre-committed to establishing non-negotiable values in a calm state, so they hold under emotional and social distress, right? So I want to make sure that's correct, right, Coach? Okay. So that's, and so then under peer pressure, the brain reward centers the brain reward centers activate strongly, making compromise feel like relief, right? Under peer pressure, right? And I can think that that's in social media aspects, that's being in our family environments, that may be us being influenced by other people as well, right? And then it also there's a resistance, so there's a feeling that we are resisting as well, right? And so the pre-work, the work that Daniel was doing, is helping him prepare for what is to come, the forethought, the seeing what will come ahead, to strengthen, to build up, to store up, so I can be prepared, not expecting it, but being ready, right? So then it says that neuroscience shows that social rejection activates the same neural pathway as a physical injury for people who are younger, right? When they feel like they're physically injured when they're younger and they don't have these higher EQs, because they feel like they're being injured because no one's taking the time to teach them. Whereas Daniel was spiritually, and he made sure that he prepared for what was to come, but he had this teaching that helped him to navigate when things came up. And so the spiritual discernment and his identity was a big thing, right? He knew who he was. He knew who he was. And I think that's the big thing that I think that stood out to me, was him understanding who he was, right? And then being around a strong community, core community. Shadrach, don't make me mess up the name. Meshach. And I can't, I can't pronounce it right. But that's, you know how we say it. But the community was a big part of that as well. So there was no compromising because we all had the same direction that we were going. We were strong, and we came together and we reasoned together so that we can continue to walk and be obedient to the Father. So that was I'm gonna stop right there.
Yeah, it's the three people, the three boys you're talking about is Rack, Shack, and the Goat. That's it.
Okay, right, Indigo. But those were his community, right?
Yeah.
So that shows you that it's important. Your environment and those who you surround yourself with, it's important. And if you don't believe and you can't walk with me and you don't believe with me, I'm not going to sit here and I'm not going back and forth. I'm not going to argue with you. I will allow you to believe as you do. And if we're in the same, if we have to be in the same environment, maybe work environment, then that's what we're going to do. We're going to be at work. But I'm not going to go back and forth with you based on what you believe versus what I believe. And I think that that's okay. We just going to have to agree to walk, this way, right here.
Well, I mean, I've been saying it for the longest. Either you grow together, or you grow apart. That you will grow one way or the other. So I think we got time to hit our last point, and I think this one is key. This is important. The devastating cost of low EQ and SQ. Neglecting emotional and spiritual intelligence creates a cascade of relational destruction, broken marriages, failed leadership, toxic environments, and a life disconnected from divine purpose. As much as 80% of adult success comes from EQ, Daniel Goleman, low EQ is linked to higher rates of anxiety and depression, increased relational conflicts, and reduced life satisfaction. Again, the book of knowledge, a fool uttereth all his mind, but a wise man keepeth it in till afterwards. So that said, question, what specific relationship conflict or leadership challenges might be directly traceable to gaps in emotional or spiritual intelligence? And that made me when you have to think a little bit on now. What specific, and it's probably going to go away, so let me change it up real quick, put more time on it. What specific relationship conflicts or leadership challenges might be directly traceable to gaps in emotional or spiritual intelligence?
Let me see the question again. Let me look at it again.
Okay, you good.
So the conflict in leadership gaps, right? I believe, right, the ones that are traceable are, again, I would think I would have to always go back to identity, right? So if you don't know who you are, you don't have a foundation of belief, you cannot effectively you can't be effective in any relationship, right? Because what's going to happen, you're going to be tossed with every wind and every doctrine, and there's nothing that you're going to believe in. And this goes back to your low emotional understanding as well, right? You're going to be susceptible to your emotions, to yourself. You're going to be susceptible to yourself, and you're not going to be able to be effective in relationship. And so I think the gaps that are traced there is raise up a child in the way that they should go, that they will not depart from it, again, because that's the foundational teaching. And then the constant learning, being in relationship, and learning more about your identity in Christ. I think since we're talking about the spiritual and the natural, right? Being more in relation, understanding the relationship that you have with Christ, and that He doesn't want anything but good things for you. Yet, if you don't follow the instructions that are given to you, your outcome may not be what you want it to be. So I'll stop there.
No, I like it. I like it. I would say, and I'm going to use a scenario to kind of paint the picture. Um, I think there comes a time where um, we invite tribulation because we're seeking more of the Father, right? We're seeking to be closer. We're seeking more responsibility, whatever that looks like. And so that becomes part of your prayer life. And then tribulation shows up. And now we're dealing with this tribulation from a joint perspective. Now, mind you, prior to this, I dealt with the majority of my spiritual tribulations from an individual perspective. Now
Mhm.
we're doing it as a joint entity. And you know how it is. If you really want to test the validity of a unit, you apply pressure to them. If you really want to see how well they trained, you apply pressure to them. It's no different than what Romans 5 and 5 says, right? I mean, Romans chapter 5, verses 1 through 5. That's no different than what it says. So now, when tribulation comes along, is there ever a point in time where I get so frustrated where I start viewing you as the adversary when we're simply trying to navigate this thing together? Like, sure, and it's just like being on a team, right? You're on a team and you're going against an opponent in real life time, and I need you to be at your designated space on time so I can get you the ball, or vice versa, but you're not there. So we go back to the hustle huddle, and I'm arguing, I'm bickering with you. That shows that there's a gap in
Right.
between my emotional intelligence. Shows a gap. I'm still creating space to I'm not necessarily getting the download where he would have told me that you're delayed because of this. So I think when we do that, when we get to the point of recognizing that you're not the enemy, the Bible tells you that you're not at war against flesh and blood, right? You're not the enemy. It helps me to now recognize, like, look, we're in this thing together. So I have to figure out, why do I view you as the enemy when the stakes are high, when the pressure is turned up a little bit? How do we get to the point to where I stop viewing you as the enemy when the pressure's turned up, and give you, recognize that you, in as best you possibly know how right now, you're doing the best you can. So how can I help you be better? And then hopefully you see that because I'm modeling that for you, then you get to turn around and do it for me. Because trust me, as a man, there's going to come a time, and I don't care who you are, you're going to experience the weight of leadership is going to be so heavy on your shoulders that you're going to need a place of refuge. If she cannot present refuge to you in that moment, then you might go find a place to lay your head. I'll say it again. You might go find a place to lay your head because that mantle is heavy. So, in order for her, like, you pour into her, that's really what it is, right? You sanctify her by the washing of the water of the word so that you can present her to yourself blameless, right? So now you're pouring into her, teaching her according to the word, helps her to actually become more suited to be your helpmeet, especially in the time where you really need her to show up, right? That is a ministry for her to him. So I think in the space of that, some of us, we struggle with that because we still see a degree of separation. And
Mhm.
when we stop creating those degrees of separation in our own mind and go back to what the word says, and we put in those daily practices like we talked about previously, we do these daily practices together that prove that we're a unit. Now, doing those things together, whether it's just conversating about the Bible, prayer, whatever that looks like, I'm not telling you how to do it for your house, but we're doing those things together. Now it bonds us together as a team so that now when adversity hits, there is no separation between us.
Um, what you just said made me think about Ephesians 4 and 26, right? And then the flooding comment, I just wanted to touch on that a little bit, right? So Ephesians 4:26 says, "Be angry and sin not. Don't let the sun go down in your wrath," right? So it acknowledges their anger is going to be inevitable, right? But it commands that we regulate it. So I think in those moments that you're talking about that come up, this one of your, one of the Dr. Ottoman calls it flooding, right? And he says it's a psychological state where the heart rate exceeds 100 beats per minute, right? And rationale processing collapse. So most marital cruelty happens in this flooded state, right? When our emotions is high and then we respond from our emotions. And so that's one of the things that it stood out to me as I was thinking about this. But it said the low EQ individuals interpret neural behaviors as threatening, creating chronic cycles of accusation and withdrawal. So that's low. That's how we respond in those moments, right? And so, the things that this is teaching me is that in those moments where the emotions is high, where I need to settle and center myself and meditate, if that's what's going to be required, so that there won't be any accusations, because that's not going to lead to harmony. That it won't be any withdrawals, because that's not going to lead to us coming together and being in harmony either. But we're taking our time to figure out what's going on with us in the moment, and then addressing it so that it will not affect the whole, because we are one. We're one, and harmony is the place that is going to be beneficial for both of us. So that's just what I wanted to add to it.
No, I greatly appreciate that, and thank you for that. And listen, thank you to everybody, to all of your comments, whether you're on the mobile side, whether you're on the computer side. We greatly appreciate you. And again, I got it. I couldn't bring everything up because we were getting pressed on time, and trust me, we've barely made it to the end. We're like with 1 minute to spare, and we still skipped a couple of questions. That said, listen, Lisa, we're just going to kind of just dive into our final thoughts. Lisa, what is what do you want to leave the people with as we kind of close out this conversation?
I think it's similar to what we've been saying this whole time, right? That the framework and the blueprint is there. God has given us the instructions, and reframing the images of relationship help us go back and to research that framework so that we can be in relationships better and stop arguing our position. Because the most important person in the relationship, as we say in this community, is the relationship. And our responsibility to each other is that we point each other back to what's most important for us in the relationship, not us as individuals, but the unit, the whole. That's what's most important. And us arguing about my position or how I feel about something is not effective. And I would also say this. I think that in a relationship, they have the premarital counseling, right? But I think that because we're ever evolving, we're always growing, that you should constantly, if you get to a place, you need to continue to go to counseling. Have a trusted person who you believe who's going to look out for the best interest of your union. Seek God first, of course. But then if you need a mediator, someone to help you navigate some of the things or transitions that you're going through in your relationship, seek out someone to help you. I don't, I think that's most important for us to do. So I just wanted to leave with that help is available. We don't have to do this alone, and community is so important. And the people in your community should be the ones helping you to protecting your union. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Thank you for the conversation.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. That was good. I'm gonna try to keep mine simple because I said a lot of what I wanted to say today. I said a lot of it last night. If you have not seen last night's show on manipulation, you should. I invite you to go back and take a look at it. I really do believe at the collective level we're struggling when it comes down to relationship. We're not trying to have relationship according to his will. We're trying to have relationship according to our own will. And then what we do is we end up creating spaces and we invite somebody else in that space. And that space is a space of failure for them because they don't even know what the inner workings of your mindset looks like. It's just like Inception, the movie Inception. You create this space and then you bring them in, you invite them, and now they have to move according to your will. That's not an accurate assessment of what relationship is supposed to be like. Get to the point to where you do the necessary work on yourself, right? Become a better communicator, become a better emotional regulator, become a better thinker. Listen, think about the things that you think about, right? When you really get good at it, take a step back outside of yourself and observe yourself standing from behind you. I know somebody heard me and say, that's strange. Yeah, that's not strange. You do it to other people all the time. Imagine doing it to yourself. If you have a thought that leads to some type of potentially reckless behavior, take a step back out of yourself and view yourself and ask, where in the world did that thought come from and why does it exist in me? I think all of these things are important. I think all of these things are they have to be intentional, but they also require practice. They require you to be taught how to do so by somebody else. I don't think it's a foreign concept. I think it has to be something that you become open to. So I just kind of don't want to leave you with that. Listen, greatly appreciate you guys. I think you guys are awesome. You're amazing. You are destined for greatness. And I believe in each and every last one of you. I just want you to have more belief in yourself than you currently have right now, according to his will. I'll say it again. I want you to have more belief in yourself than what you have right now. Well, I think highly of myself. Great. I'm not saying that you don't, but I want you to have more belief in yourself than what you do right now, according to his will. So that being said, you guys enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Continue to be a blessing to everybody that you encounter. I think that should be intentional about making somebody else smile a day. Like I don't care. You go to the gas station, call the cashier by their name. You know what I'm saying? Do stuff like that. Listen, let the continue to be a blessing. Let the best version of yourself be a blessing to other people. And we'll see you next month here on Reframing the Image of Relationships.